Good morning, everyone out there in the world. This is 8th of March today. It's FECC, the European Association of Chemical Distributors based in Brussels. I'm the managing director. My name is Dorothee Arns, and I'm the host of the day, so to say, together with Diana, my colleague, who is running the technicalities in the background. So we warmly welcome you to 1.5 hours full of inspiration and insight sharing on a very important topic, not only on this special day, which is the International Women's Day, but every day actually in life. It is about diversity and inclusion. And since we are the chemical distributors, in midst of all the chemical value chains, for us, it is, of course, of highest importance that it is diversity and inclusion in the chemical sector itself. So we have put together what we call or hope for a very exciting program, and we couldn't be happier to be joined by fantastic speakers, all female speakers. That rarely happens, and we couldn't be happier to have them on board and look forward to an exciting session. So before we start with more details and the program, let me quickly introduce the hosting organization, which is FECC, as I just mentioned before, and giving you some housekeeping remarks. So first of all, 2 slides on FECC, who we are. So FECC, as I said, stands for European Association of Chemical Distributors, which is, of course, still in the core of our heart. However, we represent, meanwhile, all chemical supply chain players, from producers to logistics service providers, IT service companies, and so on. Our members, all of them represent all chemical segments under one umbrella, which is also rather unique, even here in Brussels, ranging from fuels and petrochemicals over textiles, adhesives, coatings, polymer, plastics, whatever kind of chemical you have, up to life sciences, which we define as cosmetics, food and feed, and pharmaceuticals. We have all company sizes on board, from innovative startups to big multinationals. The supply chain functions I've mentioned already, and what is also worthwhile noting is that a lot of our members are small and medium-sized enterprises, many of those also family businesses. And this slide gives you a bit of a flavor of the supply chain functions we are fulfilling in our membership. They range from warehousing to recycling, from formulation and blending to logistics and packaging, and from research and development up to giving technical and regulatory advice to the clients, which are the downstream users of chemicals. So this was us in a nutshell. And of course, if you're interested to learn more about how the chemical value chains are evolving, what are the latest trends, what you should pay attention to in the next years to come, I warmly invite you to save the date for our annual Congress. The next one will be held in September. To be precise, from 11th to 13th of September this year in Sitges, close to Barcelona. And it's 2 days packed with a lot of insights, industry leaders coming together to bring in their experiences and observations, and a lot of networking on top. So without further ado, let me quickly go into the housekeeping remarks. That's also only 1 or 2 slides. So this is, of course, a webinar under the antitrust regulations. We will not talk about prices or other antitrust relevant topics. This is fully and exclusively dedicated to diversity and inclusion. Of course, we want to make it as interactive as possible. So I warmly invite you to send us your questions as soon as they come to your mind. Don't wait until the very last minute, please. So on your right-hand side, you find a dashboard where you find a little icon called questions. If you push that button, a little chat box opens up in which you can type your questions in. Then they will end up here with us in Brussels. I will read them out anonymously and ask our speakers of today to answer them. So many thanks in advance. And once again, I can only warmly encourage you to send us your questions. So, and without further ado, let's kick off the program of today, which is extremely exciting, at least I think so. First of all, we are happy to host the whole event together with Chemical Week by Standard & Poor's Global. We will also record this session and hope that those who couldn't make it today find inspiration afterwards, and all of us immediately, which will not be difficult with the speakers we have on board today. So we will start with Anna Littmann from McKinsey. Because Maria Spyraki at the moment is a bit delayed in time. She has another commitment, I think, what I understood, and might join us a little bit later. You will know that a lot of topics are going on in Brussels, and Maria is involved in a lot of them. So let's hope she can make it a bit later. And we are live, so we have quickly rearranged the program. And thanks to Anna, who is actually always available for a high-level presentation without a lot of lead time. So warm welcome to Anna Littmann, who is partner at McKinsey's Frankfurt office, chemist by education, as I learned, and has a PhD in economics and politics, and is an integral part, and I think even the leader of the chemical practice team of McKinsey Frankfurt, and has also a lot of experience in the energy landscape. So warm welcome to Anna. We are very happy to have you with us and look forward to an intriguing presentation in which you will also mention the latest findings of the McKinsey study, I think from December 2023, so something like 3 months old, on diversity and inclusion in the chemical sector. Many thanks for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Dorothee, and thanks a lot for the opportunity to present a bit our research around diversity, specifically around diversity of women and women representation, but I'll also mention a few points regarding diversity more general, for example, regarding ethnicity. I will start with the general findings of our research and specifically the connection also to financial performance of companies, and then over the course of the short speech go into more details regarding chemicals and energy companies. So in our research we cluster that a little bit around materials and energy towards the end. So let me start with what is one of the important reasons why diversity is important. And Diana, maybe we can go to the next page already. And so one important element is that we see a very clear correlation between female representation and also diversity in general and the financial performance of companies. And what you see here is that over the course of the years when we did our studies, this financial relationship becomes even more important. So let me quickly tell you how to what does the chart tell us? It tells us that if you're in the bottom quartile of women representation, which means that you probably have below 10% typically in your executive leadership team, versus if you are in the top quartile, you have today a 39% higher likelihood to actually have a better financial performance than the industry average, which is really quite a large value. And also, as you see over the past years, that really significantly increased. When we go on the next page, this also again shows you how much this is increasing over time. And yeah, on the next page, we also see that specifically the penalty for companies who are not doing well is increasing significantly. So when you look at the bottom right here when we look at both gender and ethnicity in the very latest report, there you see that when we are in the bottom quartile of both those, there's really a significant likelihood that you are performing much worse than the industry average. And when we say performing here, we mean EBIT specifically, but there is a long report, which is, if anyone is interested in the details, we publish for free on the web. there is also a very positive effect on many other dimensions. Just for today, I picked EBIT and financial performance, but of course the importance of diversity is much broader than this one only. So now let's start with a few good news. So the women representation in companies on average is improving over the year. And why do I show here this slightly complex chart instead of just one line increasing overall? Because the good thing also, you see that it increases over the years. So in the very bottom, you have the companies which we are monitoring for the longer duration of the time. And there you see it's still increasing a lot. And it's also actually increasing more than for the companies which we look at for a shorter time frame. So it's really improving across everything, and you'll also later see this is true for all industries. That's true across industries. It's also true for the chemical industry. However, what you also see there, well, the numbers on the right-hand side between 30 and 70% of improvement look impressive. When you look at what does that mean year by year, I don't think anyone can be satisfied. When you look at this year by year, we are talking about something between 1 and 2 percentage improvement per year, which means I think until we would reach close to equal representation, that will probably take us another 50, 60, 70 years or so, which I don't think can be the aspiration of anyone in this group or anyone in any group actually. So now let's look first at the cut, before we go to the cut across industries, at the cut across countries. When we look at the different countries, we see that specifically in the Western world, Diana, can we go to the next page? I think we probably, perfect, thanks a lot. That when we look at the countries, we see that specifically in the Western world, we see a workforce participation between 40 and 50% typically. In some emerging countries, that's still a bit lower, but on average, 40 to 50% is what we see. However, when you then see what is the female representation in the executive level, and the executive level, also to be maybe very clear here, is not only the board level that is typically referred to up to C-level minus 2 or 3, depending a little bit on the size of the company. But here you see that even in the best country, which in this case is Norway, we only see that as 35%, versus when you look, for example, at Germany, where I'm coming from, this is 15%, and also many of the other European countries, you more see somewhere between the 15 and 25% range. Now let's look at the different industries. And here, well, I would say I have not the best news, but I also believe it's known to many in this call, is that the chemical industry, which we here list within the energy, basic material, and environment, is the second worst industries of all the industries we look at. The good news, on the other hand, is it's increasing also in the chemical and in the energy basic material in this industry, but still we are on the second last place globally in terms of female representation. So you see here 18%, which, well, is less than 1 out of 5. It looks a bit better. We also look at board level. It looks a little bit better there. But as many of you will know, this is also driven highly by some legislation or some, let's call it threatening of legislation in the past, that there is a close to 30% representation over there. But also there we still see increasing numbers over the past years. Now, well, I would love to try to sell that as really good news. So we are on the executive level, we are developing a little bit better as the chemical industry compared to the other industries. But nevertheless, when I look at the numbers, well, we are growing with 1.2% compared to 1.1% across all the industries, or 1.0 roughly in this sample. It's still slow. It's a little bit faster, but we also started from a lower starting point. So I again don't think that that this is the level we want to be at. And as you see, there is still a lot to do. But now let's talk about what can we actually do. And the next page is actually based on a bit of a different research. So this page you will not find in the diversity matter report that I just mentioned. That was specifically conducted by us in the chemical industry, as we also at McKinsey have some networks with our female clients in the chemical industry, and conducted a lot of interviews there. So that is now not based on a large set of numbers, but a bit more qualitatively. Nevertheless, I suspected that the topics will sound familiar to you. So what we found, what are some of the reasons on why we still have this low representation? And not all of those reasons are super specific to the chemical industry, but that were the ones mentioned a lot by the colleagues there. Is one, the leadership style and identity, that you very often see that as a woman, also in your early career days, you see how leadership behaves. And specifically with the male behavior, you can't really identify. Very often women also don't find this type of leadership style attractive. And that is one of the reasons why colleagues don't, or female colleagues don't aspire to get into a leadership position, or at least not in a leadership position in an industry where they don't find role models how this can work for them. The second part is the networks. So I think this part is getting better and better over the past years. And many companies start to initiate female networks, or also mixed female-male networks. But I think this is 2 points. One is, of course, when you're in a female network, most likely the network is still smaller and probably also less high on a management, from a management perspective in the organization than the one with the male colleagues. But the other part is also that in the traditional networks, which is actually there shouldn't be a separation between networks for female and male, but very often those boys club networks, as it's sometimes referred to, aren't really attractive for women. So they say that when they join those networks, when they join the meetings, the discussions, they can't really bond very well, as the culture is relatively male dominated, and they don't see they don't see it as a pleasure necessarily to engage, and hence are also probably a little bit more active there, less likely to join and really bond with the colleagues in those networks. Claiming position is another point, which I think many in this group will have read. For example, Lean In from Sheryl Sandberg, which I think is a book. She shows very well how our early education trains us to some behaviors that are not beneficial in the day-to-day work in many companies, be it chemicals or not, which is very difficult to overcome once you are actually at a certain age, because those behaviors, even if we don't realize them immediately, they are in our brains from very early childhood on. The positioning in the work is another one quite common, that there seems to be a tendency that also sometimes women are asking more for the work, which they perceive as being well, rewarding work for themselves. However, it's not necessarily the work which is very well visible in the organization or which is considered as being very rewardable by the company itself. I find the second point even more, not challenging, but even more severe, which is that there is often an implicit assumption of male, but also of female colleagues, leading colleagues, managers, that once their female colleagues become children or have children, that they want to step back. I don't want to go too much into the details here, but also, I mean, I've seen various examples myself also where without any real bad intent, but just the assumptions were made that once someone has a child, they want to step back instead of just asking them what the female colleagues actually want. Last but not least, and that was specifically also addressed in the publication, not published this year, but in the 2021. There is also leadership qualities which, well, there are leadership qualities which we call a bit more modern leadership qualities versus a bit more traditional leadership qualities, and specifically those traditional leadership qualities, for example, being very directive, leading more top-down than leading inclusive, are associated with male behaviors. I'm not saying it is, but they are associated by many people with male behaviors, and still in many companies, specifically in the more conservative industries, as the chemical industry still is one, are associated with males more than with females. So again, associated means that is not necessarily true, but that is what people implicitly or explicitly think. Maybe one last important point before we have maybe time for one or two questions. There's one very important point. The whole topic of female representation, and Diana, maybe we can switch to the next page. The whole topic of female representation is a topic that females can't solve on their own. It needs to be also clear to the male colleagues why diversity is, sorry to putting it this way, but is something good. Of course, we all believe that it should be clear to everyone why a diverse leadership team is leading better, but that is also why in our presentations we very often emphasize a bit the financial element, because that is one element that at least on a first glance is then also quite clear to everyone. We say, hey, this is not something we do to be an inclusive company for the sake of being an inclusive company. This is something which also really benefits the society and the company itself. However, when we look at what male colleagues think about gender diversity, then you find some, well, surprising or frightening results, which is that indeed, while when you ask women, most women will tell you, so 95% will tell you that, yes, we believe that with the same education, with the same qualifications, it's more challenging for us to reach a top management position. The share of men who believe that is increasing, but it's still a third of the male colleagues who don't believe that at all, and then quote sometimes that some women don't want it, etc. pp. The other important thing is the male colleagues need to be aware of the difficulties. So we did some research there showing what men think about diversity measures, and there you also say that, well, men who are more aware of the actual difficulties of women in the day-to-day work are much less opposed to those measures than those who aren't aware of those challenges. That is maybe, yeah, I think that was it. Thanks a lot, Diana, for sharing the presentation and clicking through. And before we before we hand over to the wonderful panel with our 4 female leaders in the industry, back to you, Dorothee, to see if we have 1 or 2 questions to take.
Yeah, first of all, many thanks for an excellent presentation, and if I may say so, also very outspoken, Anna. I think I could subscribe to everything you said from own experience. So, and indeed, we have a couple of questions, more than 1 and 2, but I take them in the order of appearance, so to say, because we have to cut them off. There are a lot of questions. Your presentation sparked a lot. So, do you have data for diversity in organizations beyond executive teams and the boards?
Yes and no. So I don't think we have any relation for between general representation versus the EBIT, and one of the main reasons is that the data here is based on publicly available information, and to my understanding, we don't have that through all the levels. Nevertheless, what we have, for example, for a subset of this is that it's very clear if you have a higher representation on the executive level, you also have on average a higher level of female representation across all the company. So typically those are very closely linked indeed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then another question which links in very well into the previous one. How do you explain the difference in time at the board, which seems to differ from ladies with 3 years to gentlemen with more than 8 years on average? Yeah, study I've seen as well recently.
I also know that we actually did a double dip in there, so I'm very happy to share the chapter on detail on that. But we don't have an explanation. We see it. We don't have an explanation. A part of that we believe is actually that the women are not yet as represented in those boards as for such a long time represented as before, and many people there is also a bit of a research issue there in the sense of that when the analysis was done, it was just when a lot of new women started in the board, also driven a bit by the 30% threat, as I called it, the 30% threat, and then later on the legislation for the boards. So that is a part of the explanation, but not the full one.
Okay, very good. So sorry for those who have submitted questions. We might come back to those later on if there is some room left. And hey, cool, we see Maria Spyraki there. Maria, super. Finally, we got you on board. That's great. So you see how live we are. We are changing the program constantly, but then at least nobody falls asleep, I think. So welcome to Maria. You missed a nice presentation on the impulse and setting the scene side about ladies and gentlemen in the chemical industry and other industries from Anna Littmann. So thank you, Anna. And now I would like to make, of course, the opportunity to have Maria on board, whom I have actually already more or less introduced Maria. And you have 5 to 10 minutes for us, squeezed out of your busy agenda, to make a little bit of a welcome speech on behalf of the European Parliament, I would think. And let me quickly repeat what I've actually already said. I discovered in the preparation of this webinar that you have a chemistry background. I wasn't aware of that, because the way I know Maria is as a very engaged and influential politician and long-standing member of the European Parliament, I think since 10 years already, from the Conservative Party of Greece, and very knowledgeable on chemistry and chemical regulation. And you have also dealt with journalists. I think you have also a journalist kind of background on the other side. So very diverse, unified all in one person. So welcome, Maria. The floor is yours for 5 to 10 minutes of how does the European Parliament sees today's day, International Women's Day, and what, I think it's a core value, but please elaborate on on behalf of the EU institutions?
Well, first of all, Dorothee, it's very, very honored and very, very important for me to join this debate, and thank you very much for having me. And allow me just to say that it is also important because I have been deep engaged on the issue of chemical strategy for sustainability, starting with the strategy, with the motion for resolution, on which I had the honor to be the first author, but also on classification, labeling and packaging, which is the regulation on this, the update regulation, on which also I had the honor to be the rapporteur on behalf of the European Parliament. And allow me to say that it is important for all of us as ladies, for all of us as people working on the sector from various perspectives, that we will try to go ahead with increasing the level of implementation of our strategies in order to increase, first of all, the level of protection of the consumers, but also supporting and accelerating innovation for safe and sustainable chemical by design, which is the main goal on our strategy. And on this, let me just say briefly that we start doing this by updating classification, labeling and packaging regulation, on which we ensure, first of all, we try to ensure that the safety of the consumers by adding new potential hazardous categories, like potential carcinogenic categories. They are 5 now in our list, according to the delegated act coming from the Commission, also to increase the level of the environmental protection, and also not to distract the market of essential oil sector, which is of course very important in the industry of cosmetics. But at the same time, allow me to say that this level of available information of the consumers that we did our best in order to increase the protection of the consumers. And female consumers holding the main share of the market at cosmetics and fragrance sector. It is our role enough as consumers of chemicals in different versions? The answer, according to my opinion, is no. And according to data, the number of women in chemical manufacturing remains extremely low, less than 30% of over 10 million people in this industry, which are women. As many all know, the representation of women in the chemical industry and also in many STEM, science, technology, engineering and mathematics fields has historically been lower compared to other sectors. In the last years, there are efforts have been made globally to encourage more women to pursue careers in STEM, including the chemical sector. I would like just to give you a sense of my experience, combining with the motto coming of Madame McLaren. It is not just about attracting more women into the chemical industry. Organizations need to mentor, to encourage and sponsor women as they progress through their careers. And by having women get together in these phenomenal networking groups for open and honest dialogues, especially with senior women leaders, is hugely encouraging and impactful in helping people build lasting careers. It's very, very important, and also quoting the lady I have already mentioned. And allow me to give another one point, which is in politics, on which I would like to make a bridge. I would like to build a bridge in the combination. It is important to say that we have female figures like Angela Merkel, Sanna Marin, Kamala Harris, and also Ursula von der Leyen. We vote for her just yesterday in order to continue leading the European Commission, and of course Roberta Metsola and Christine Lagarde as the president of the European Central Bank. But the case for me is beyond national politics and beyond European politics. The point for me is the cooperation among women, which is diverse and dynamic and shaped by cultural, social and economic factors. And while progress has been made in promoting collaboration and support among women, challenges and disparities still exist on ongoing efforts that are needed to promote gender equality and empower women in various aspects of life. For instance, cooperation among women can take various forms and occurs in different contexts, including professional, social, and community settings. Women often form professional networks and organizations to support each other in the workplace. These groups may focus on career development, mentorship, and addressing gender-specific challenges in certain industries, and it is my little suggestion to the chemical industry to go on to this path. Women frequently engage in mentorship programs to support and guide each other in their careers, because we know which is the wedding of solidarity, and how can we go on this? How can we follow a roadmap and implement this? Women may collaborate to advocate for gender equality and address issues such as equal pay, representation and opportunities in all sectors in the industry. And this can involve participating or supporting initiatives that promote the diversity and inclusion. And of course, we have women entrepreneurs that they maybe collaborate with each other to share resources, to share knowledge, to share experience, and fostering a supportive environment for business growth and success. Concluding, as a woman, as a mommy of two, and also as a working politician, I would like to conclude with my favorite motto: under the precondition of better sharing, if we have a man or a woman to stand by us at home, please do not take the whole responsibility of unpaid work at home for taking care of everything. Please follow your dreams until the end of the world. Please remember, it is a man's world, but we are transforming it into a tolerant and equal opportunities world. And please believe me, Europe is the best place to live, especially when you are a woman. Thank you very much once again for giving me the opportunity to address this very, very important webinar the day today.
Wow, that was a fantastic speech, very inspiring. Thank you so much, Maria, for taking your time and your busy agenda to join us for today. And fantastic conclusions as well. It really starts at home. And yes, we are men and women, but first of all, we are human beings. And so thank you so much for giving us the time. And you made a fantastic intro also for the next panel, the program point of our CEO Roundtable. So now we fluently move to the CEO Roundtable. So the final agenda item of today, and a very intense one. And we were extremely lucky that we found 5 very busy ladies who were extremely quick in making themselves available despite all their commitments to join this roundtable. And we are more than honored and happy to have them all on board. Let's start with the moderator. Our moderator of today is Lynn Tattum, who is the Vice President and of Standard & Poor's Global and publisher of Chemical Week. Then she will be joined by Hellinckx, who is the Azelis CEO for EMEA, which means Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Then we have Nathalie Veronelli, who is in the board of Eigenmann and Veronelli. Then next is Herlinde Wauteraerts, who is the CEO of Europe for Omya. And last but not least, we have Irina Zschaler on board, who is the CEO of Georg, Nordmann Holding Aktiengesellschaft. So also a lot of diversity in this panel in terms of nationalities and companies and educational backgrounds. But in any case, everyone very committed to this topic, and very happy to have you on board. The floor is yours, and we look forward to an inspiring discussion.
Thank you, Dorothee. I think we had a really great introduction, and can you hear me still? Yes, good. Thank you. Thank you. From Maria. And, you know, this data from Anna is very interesting about the performance of companies who have a good representation in the boardroom. And I see in front of me you ladies who are leading these boardrooms in a very specific area of the chemical industry. And it's very inspiring. So I want to hear from each of you, if you wouldn't mind, perhaps the story about your personal experience and where you got to in your current position today. So let's have a little chat about that topic. One of you would like to volunteer to go first.
Sure, I can share some thoughts if that's okay. So first and foremost, I think on my trajectory, I've encountered a bit the same challenges as the men would have in terms of mastering the content or learning to manage teams. But one of the challenges that I have encountered, and that builds also onto what Anna has mentioned before, which may be different, is this perception or the feeling of sometimes being alone. At some point, I was in my career the only female consultant in the office or the first female manager. Now in this industry, I often find myself to be the only female in the meeting room. Or the only person that people look at when the discussion is about, managing a family and a career. So that perception, I do believe, is still particular to us. At a previous company, it was indeed assumed that I would take a step back when I was pregnant. Azelis, to the contrary, recruited me during my maternity leave, just to show the difference. And I think that illustrates it very well, that within your career, it's also important to find sponsors, to find people, men or women, that want to, really do the right thing or sponsor you. And it's important for companies and women to understand that women nowadays have an alternative. They can just go work somewhere else if a company doesn't allow for that.
Yeah, I like really to follow that, because the sponsor thing is really important, I would say. So in my career, I have a wonderful role model with my mother that helps me a lot. So in my family, it was clear, we are used to that. In my own family, I have 2 children, we have the same. So for them, it was clear. That was not really an unused or question mark on that. So I had a really big support from my family. But exactly what you said, Evie, it is you need the support of the company and especially of your team, because if your team is not following the same idea, it is really impossible. And you need also support from your management and also for the shareholders. So I can only say, coming now to Edgar Nordmann's death, it's already today, exactly today, it's 1 year ago. He died on 8th of March, 2023. He was so supportive exactly on this topic. And so it was so wonderful having him always around talking about the topic and be sensitive of the topic. I think that is also very, very important. And this is why I think we can only manage everything together. It is not the women, it is not a man, it is always we together and a whole team who manage diversity at all.
In my case, as a woman in the industry and as a board member, the main challenges were at board level, having men focused on business, to introduce the concept of having properly organized the functions of human resources, of communication, and of the digital enabled transformation. And this on the business side. And on the other side, on the personal side, okay, the main challenge is to bring forward a family, to manage also to be the CEO of the family, being the board member in the company, and bringing forward these values. And I would also like to introduce briefly remembering Edgar, and also because he is one of my inspirational leaders as a front runner in managing both inclusion and diversity, as he also paved the path. He introduced the first woman CEO I ever met in our industry, which was the predecessor of Irina Zschaler. So I fully, and on the same time, also observing Azelis, also they're also the front runners in our industry, because since long time they have the actual CEO Anna Bertona and now Evie. So I think it's also related to the leadership of men who are able to recognize these elements, inclusion and diversity, as success factors of the company.
Well, I would echo what all of you said, and I think, Evie, as you mentioned, we need to manage the content on a professional level just like men do. I mean, in that respect, it's the same for all of us. In my own experience, contrary to what some of you mentioned, I didn't have the role model, and nothing against that, but my mother was a very traditional housewife, never been active professionally. I see that in that respect, probably it is very inspiring for young women today that they have a lot more role models that they can look at. And I think it also gives them more self-awareness and the courage to do that. So it's very inspiring to see that in that respect, a lot has changed. There are many nice role models to look at, which can be, well, show the path. But indeed, it's not about only the women. I mean, I would never have been there where I am today if I would not have had the support of, indeed, the shareholders of the company, of the key leaders, all being men. And like Evie, I'm like you. I mean, all my years of professional experience has always been one woman in the room, and that was me. But you get used to it, and also you see that the men don't think that much anymore, in the sense of, in the beginning, yes, you get some comments, but afterwards, once that you're accepted as a member, you're accepted as a member, and then you just have to deliver like everybody else. So it's also getting indeed the support and the recognition of your male colleagues, which is extremely important. So it's not about them and us, it's about all together. What I think is very inspiring as well is that the young women of today, they're much more outspoken than I was in my early days. I needed to learn to become much more vocal. So I was sometimes standing in my own way, not being vocal enough, not being clear enough about my expectations, and to make sure that you get the visibility that you would need to have in order to also grow in a company. Because when I started in a very male-dominated world as well, they were not even having women on the radar screen for a management position. So you need to make sure that you get the visibility there as well. And all of that is changing in a much more positive trend nowadays. So I think that's very encouraging and something that we as female role models need to support a lot more.
So talking about the change, can you hear me okay? Talking about, you know, we heard the data from Anna. It could be 70 years before we have parity for women in the boardroom. Actually, a few years ago, that was 100 years. So I think it's progressing a bit. But do you see, I mean, are you really seeing this progress in the distribution sector, let's say, and then perhaps the chemical industry? And is there a difference between those two arenas? Does anybody want to comment on that? Herlinde, I see you nodding. Did you have something to say?
I think the progress is really low. So it does not mean that there is nothing. We see the figures, but in fact, the realization of the women around me or around us is not so big as we can just say, oh, there's really something, there's a sign, there's really something going on. So I would say it's really low, and it's always a few parts of women which are there, but it's not big growing that you can really feel it.
Yeah, I would have to concur with that, Irina. We made some visible progress in the last years with, for example, both Azelis and IMCD appointing female CEOs, with all of us here around the table. I know within Azelis we also have a good representation at the broader global management team, but that's difficult to say across the broader industry. What I can see there is my perception when I am at conferences, and I have to say that yes, over the 7 years that I am now with Azelis, I maybe see some progress, maybe more on the life science side than on the industrial side in the general, let's say, chemical conferences. But let's phrase it that way. Let's be honest, the waiting queue at the bathrooms is not always very long. And that is quite typical for our industry, I believe, in chemical distribution and chemicals. And I would hate if that is still the case when my daughters get into the workplace. So I think we have kind of the opportunity and the duty to not make it last 70 years.
If I can add, I do see in, do you hear me? Yes, so I can see in other industries that there's, at least in Italy, I can notice, maybe driven also by the law, but there's increasingly women who are nominated CEO, and I think this will influence also the chemical industry. So, and I think also we might not have, at least in our company, we have a real large number of women. We are almost 50 to 50%. So it's a growing culture, also because the women are in the specific role of caring. So they maybe are not recognized, but it's coming. And I fully agree with Maria Spyraki on the importance of networking, of the awareness, of supporting each other, and also of interacting in enhancing same level dialogue with men. So this is I think it's very important. I see it coming, and I strongly believe that we will manage to reach 50% in 10 or 20 years.
I would agree that
to be honest,
progress is visible, and I think if you mentioned quite two very striking examples, being Azelis and IMCD, I think that's probably a very positive signal to the entire chemical industry, and especially the chemical distribution world. I mean, two quite important positions, basically, which were given to women. In the environment I'm working in, which is a mix between chemical industry and the mining industry, which is also traditionally a very male-dominated industry, there is progress that is made, definitely. I mean, if I just look at the last 10 years, women in management positions in the company on an international level, so there is progress, and it's giving hope that this will fasten. Not believing that it will become an exponential growth, but every model or every woman with a successful track record encourages other ones, and also inspires the male environment around us to be more open for these positions. So I do think that this progress will continue, and it will accelerate. I'm positive in that respect.
I see more of you on the screen who are from, personally, I'm in the chemical industry more often than in the distribution sector, and it's more difficult to find CEOs and board members in the chemical sector than I have experienced with meeting you all today. So I think the distribution sector is a little ahead from what I can see. So let's have a talk about how things can change. Do you yourselves have you yourselves initiated policies in your own companies? Do you think we need to have quotas? What steps do you think really that we can take to make it happen? Irina?
Yeah, so we have until today not special policies on that. We just work on leading by example. So if we are in a meeting or if you are in discussions, it's more the question, and it's all more to question mark why me am alone, or why there is so less diversity on board, meaning that by a friendly way, just making everybody sensitive on that, yeah? And if you just are looking for the education, or if you are looking for the networking, you always can place the same question. I think that's much nicer from the approach than giving hard guidelines. But if that will not work, then we will go through the guidelines, because at the end, it's like the quotas. At the beginning, I was against the quotas. I always says, look for quality, and then after first for quantity. But if it is not working, you have to change, and then you have to look what is possible and what brings more possibility and more sensitization on this topic. So then I think we will just go from the two guidelines, and it's similar like the topic of mobile office. Before we have this corona, I think as average there was less mobile office, and now by this power and by this stress, we have to change, we have to move, then it comes through mobile office or home office is a little bit more used to. So at the end, if talking, discussion, sensitization does not work, you have to go through guidelines and hard facts. Yeah.
In Eigenmann and Veronelli, we don't have a diversity policy yet, but we have the strong awareness on how much, according to our strategic plan and growth plan, and we want to work on this aspect. And as there are various aspects which have to be considered, for example, the training of the management and staff, or the recognition and the overcoming of unconscious biases, and of course the creation of an inclusive policies and the fostering of the communication, so the involvement. We do have some activities, for example, which are cultural. So we have activators also with an association which is called Value Diversity. So online courses which can be with a monthly opportunity for colleagues to switch on. So and also we put special focused attention also on the recruiting phase, in which we search for young people or who have this kind of open mentality. So
we do have diversity policies embedded in our company. We have both, let's say, a non-discrimination policy and an anti-harassment policy that are also part of the annual compliance training that everyone at Azelis needs to fulfill. We have the clear guideline that we do not discriminate based on age, gender, sexual orientation, or whatsoever. And then within our Sustainability Action 2025 plan, we have 2 KPIs specifically dedicated to diversity. The first one being that we want to have 100% of our line managers trained on diversity and inclusion. And the second KPI is that we want 30% of our senior leadership positions to be held by women. And in the latest update of how we perform against those KPIs that we actually just published, we are already achieving almost these KPIs in 2023 already. So that's how we are driving it within the company.
Same for our company, as Avi said, we have it in the corporate policies. We have several KPIs as well, who measure diversity, inclusion, non-discrimination, etc. It is not reflected with quota. So in the sense that if there's an open position and both men and women are equal, we will give preference to, the different gender and different ethics in order to indeed stimulate the diversity and inclusion. And personally, I also think that quota, midterm, long-term, don't work basically. It should be the same competence, and then with awareness and positive stimulation and policies, try to bring it indeed to a higher level of diversity and inclusion, but not necessarily with quotas.
Have you interacted in the distribution sector, let's say, in your industry? Have you interacted in any way beyond this particular discussion, but to encourage across the distribution sector awareness about diversity? Have any of you participated in that, or have you got any plans?
So there is a lot of networking on that. There's a lot of discussion on that, and there is a lot of groups and rumors to exactly work on that. But I think that there is, like today, which I think we are all very thankful that we have this opportunity to talk here, as well as having the impulse coming from the FECC. Thank you for that. That's not so often. It comes now with these Women's Day of today. But on other days or it's not so often. So this is something where exactly what we discussed before concerning the sponsors, concerning the networking, concerning platforms. I think it's always good to talk again and again about that. Then we are getting used to, and then it's not anymore a little bit what they are doing. It's more, great, it's normal, it's good. Let's listen, let's talk.
I've had the opportunity so far more within the companies where I work and within Azelis to kind of influence pathways to mentor and coach women with potential. And it's really excited to then see them progress in their career paths. So I would say so far I've had more the experience or the opportunity internally within the company to do experience sharing, to have the conversation, to give some tips and tricks and some mentoring more so than in the broader industry. Although there are at every FECC conference indeed some conversations around that as well.
Same from my side. Sorry, Nathalie, go ahead. You go. Same for our company. It's more in the company internally than across the industry, I would say. What I do see more and more, and I'm part of it as well, is like a multi-industrial platform where we try to bring women together in order to support each other more in terms of mentoring groups. But I'm not so much aware with really the platforms in the chemical distribution industry. There I see more activity in the company ourselves. So, sorry, apologies, Nathalie.
In my case, I personally decided to, rather than talk about it, to act on it. And I was lucky because just recently, 2 months ago, we started networking on personal initiative with other Italian women, CEO women, to address the fact of comparing and of supporting each other. So it's more on a personal way, and I think okay, it's maybe a long path, but I find it very useful, so encouraging, and I'm very glad and thankful and grateful for this opportunity today.
Did you learn anything, Nathalie, from the other women in different sectors?
Yes, that astonishingly, also at high level and having very, very prepared and skilled and women, the bias of the interaction with men is one thing to address. So I think it's the training on dialogue capabilities. So finding the way and defining your own style, but also really, in some cases, it's based on communication and interaction and bias. So encouraging. So knowing that also the other ladies have the same problem helps us to discuss how to face it. And I think for at least of me, it's useful. So it's. And but I think this is a trend. So talking about it and going into all the psychological aspects before, and cited that we are grown or have been grown by our generation with specific role models for girls and for boys. I do think starting to be aware of it and understanding how to change it to the sake of listening to each other, men and women, and understanding for the project of the companies is something which I think, at least I personally have to train a lot, but I think this for me will be the way. So starting on my person, but and trying to involve and introduce and interact with the others.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. And do you all think that you have the opportunity personally to make this change happen? we talked about,
by,
you know,
by participating, by taking extra time beside all the other engagements to believe in it and to feel it as a strength. So being available for it. So and what I especially like is that we are a lot of women who are willing to do this, so committed and available to do it.
It's a kind of creating a self-image, or it's a kind of creating a self-image, and especially for Generation Z, it is totally different for the old ones. So it's not a question of should we do something? It's we have to, for all of us to get the added value and to be happy in all generations in the future also. So it's really again creating a self-image for that, to move that topic forward, to have all the next generations in the right shape.
And I would also like to add that there are also, I think it's a style of leadership, because I encounter also men who are open to it, who fully understand the value of dialogue. So it's not only between women, but also the understanding and harnessing the value of the diversity. So this is a skill which is needed and which can enormously contribute, starting from the awareness of it.
Have you noticed any, Avi, you want to say something?
No, I was going to say I 100% agree to that. This is not a topic just for women by women. It should also, and it does also include the men. I've had so many positive reactions upon my appointment, many from women around the company, but also from men or from our business partners, that really, as for the women, they really then feel represented. They're enthusiastic about seeing the possibilities, but also men saying, you know, well done, this is a great step. So I do perceive that it's also being seen as a positive sign. And as to, you know, personal contribution, yes, I do think we, like Irina said, we have to do something and make time for this. And that's also how I see it. And I believe we can make the change.
And you also have a female CEO, I believe.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a very good, powerful position going on there.
Yes, we have a female group CEO, and then I'm also part of the executive leadership team. So overall, Azelis has a 40% representation in the executive committee already.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to ask you about, you're all part of global organizations, and do you perceive any difference on these questions that we're discussing globally, or you think Europe is pretty representative of other regions where you operate? Anyone had any thoughts?
I would say there are some differences across regions, just as there are differences within Europe and there are differences within industry segments. But those differences are not to be exaggerated. And they can definitely not serve as, let's say, an excuse to not make progress everywhere. I give you two examples. We can say, for example, that in many countries across Europe, and I think Maria was hinting to that, the STEM education is still less preferred. So there are maybe less chemical engineers that are female than there are males. So you could say that the starting base is a bit different for talent recruitment. But then that's not everywhere the case. In Turkey, for example, it's completely the opposite way. And it's one of our best performing teams in EMEA, and it's led by a female managing director, and most of the team are actually women. And then finance is also not seen as a typical, you know, female, let's say, expertise. Middle East Africa is not necessarily seen as the area of female representation, yet our finance manager for the Middle East Africa region is a female. So I believe progress can be made everywhere.
I would agree there, Avi. I mean, there are differences that we see. I mean, purely looking at our company, can't say that the share of women is equally high as we currently see it in Europe, basically. I think I would put probably North America and Europe in the same pocket, and then you see some differences in other regions. Indeed linked to cultural differences that there are naturally, but I would fully concur with what Evie is saying. We see very, very positive signals as well, and sometimes in countries where you would even not expect it. So that gives a lot of hope that, and I think that's a trend that will continue. The more qualified good women we see that step up and speak up, the more this will progress, basically. So we should not exaggerate it, and also indeed not use it as an excuse not to basically put women on the forefront.
So I'm mindful that there were some questions. Dorothee, I don't know if you have anything that you want to pose on behalf of the audience.
Yeah, perfect timing as usual, Lynn. Many thanks. This is really a very inspiring discussion. Thanks for making yourselves available and for being so outspoken. Indeed, we have some questions, and since some of you have to leave at 12 o'clock sharp, I'll keep it short and ask also for short answers. So one of the question is, how can you address the loss of ladies who start at the beginning of their career in a chemical industry and afterwards we lose them with increasing years in service? You want me to read it out again?
Yeah, I think it's always the same. It's exactly what we said. You have to be sensitive on that topic, and you have to really ask within your HR group issue why that happened, why somebody leave, or why somebody's not joining in, or why we lose the people. And I think you get the honest information out of that when you are in this networking areas, or FECC, if there is a kind of near to Barcelona, such as what we said before, then we have to exchange what happened, why it happened, and what to do to get those persons more in activities on this thing. I think it's not helpful just to look only in the own company. It's the whole industry. It's the whole distribution world where we just have to place a question that has to be opened or answered honestly. And then we can move forward on that.
Likewise, I think it's about recognizing the talent early on, and then grooming the talent, removing any biases there may be, showing women that it's possible. So having these conversations, and also making it possible in terms of work-life balance for them, as for men, by the way, because increasingly men are also asking for these measures. So I would say it's all of the combined that we need to take care of as companies.
Okay, so thanks for the answers. Then another question, also a very relevant and interesting one. What about the gender pay gap? Is there any in the chemical value chain, and how to address this topic?
I think I can confirm that it still is, but I think that the path of being aware, of talking about it, of how to say, of the whole industry and growing will reduce it significantly. So we hope to be capable of being the front runners and on this, and I think we all can engage about it.
Well, I think statistics show that there is still a gap, but now based on own experience and looking at recent recruitments that were done either in my team or even on the group level, it's very encouraging to see that more and more women come with a salary package that is sometimes even higher than some of the male competitors. So there's still a gap, yes, and catch-up movement. And I think I referred to that in the beginning. Women probably need to be a bit more outspoken as well about salary requests than men. Men usually do that automatically, where women sometimes have the tendency to wait too long. But if I see, again, based on recent experience, I think that is disappearing more and more. And we as female leaders can also positively contribute to that in order to make sure that we, that we change that for the future and that the gap will over time disappear.
We are using job gradings for every function, as well as objective benchmarks that we get from an outside provider for every position, so as to exclude maximally any bias or any gap there might be. So that way we try to go for, or we are going for a fair remuneration for everyone. That being said, I'm not aware of let's say recent solid data for our industry on the gap there may still exist.
Sorry, the statistics I was referring to, Avi, were more the general ones, which are published indeed on salary gap between men and women, and this is across industry, so it's not specific for the chemical distribution industry.
Would be interesting to have that done for our industry, but again, I don't think it exists unless.
Dorothee, something to work on.
Yeah.
We'll give that to Anna for the next study. So I'm not aware of the gender pay gap there in numbers, I have to say. And I would hope it is closing, or it has closed already, because in fact, I know it from my BASF time, and I think a lot of companies do the same as Azelis is doing, having job grades, and then it does not matter who you are and how old you are or what qualifications you have or whatever, but what it matters is your performance and the job description that you deliver on expectation or even better beyond. But of course it exists, and it always makes me angry if I read that, yes. Okay, I have another question, and I think that's the last one we can accommodate with the big request for maybe a one-sentence answer. That's the same I've actually already asked Anna. There's somebody very persistent on that topic. Why do female board members stay less time in years on board than their male counterparts? Do you have an explanation from your experience? I mean, fortunately, you all are very long there already.
I think it's first it's stepping in, and if you are stepped in, then maybe there is something with family planning, whatever. So it is, I think, not because of the round where you are sitting. I think it's circumstances, and anyhow, it's less percentage that women are there. So it seems that we are stepping earlier out, but I think it's so less women at the end. And then if you step out, it has really an influence on the percentage. I think it's not really that we are so short on board, but maybe interesting to analyze that.
In addition, maybe in some companies there might be they want to exchange to renovate, so that the board. I don't know if it's connected to that, or also to the fact that we all have to remember that women are always very also engaged on the business part, or also on the personal part, and so the family constraints in following children or following also the elderly people are equally important to them. So maybe this has an impact. I don't know.
Okay.
Also, I don't know about this statistic specifically, if it is whether they really step out or whether it is just the average tenure. Because if companies are now expanding their boards to women, then obviously the women are the newest ones, and the average tenure would always be lower just by the sheer, time that they are there. So again, I don't know the statistic. I would not have any other explanation than what is given here already.
Yeah, we'll delve into that topic maybe with at another occasion, because for today we are almost done, I have to say. Anna, are you still there, or did we lose you? Anna Littmann? because we give all the questions to Anna for the next McKinsey study, I would say, to possibly follow up. And when we have the next diversity and inclusion event at FECC, then Anna comes with the latest findings of the study. So so Anna, if you are still there, please switch on your, yes. There she is. Fantastic. Anna, so you got some jobs here on top.
Yeah, I heard that. Sorry, I just had difficulties refinding the audio on a webcam, but I heard all the tasks for the next study.
Super. Because the feedback I get also, because besides the questions, a lot of positive feedback that you are all extremely inspiring. So, and this is what I can only echo from my modest observation. Many, many thanks to all of you for setting the scene, for being so outspoken, for sharing your personal experiences, and a lot of extremely inspiring and motivating words. I think the message I got is, first of all, dream your dream. You can be everything today, regardless of who you are, which gender you have, which ethnicity or age, whatever. We are privileged here in Europe to have the options all with us, and we have some fantastic role models with all of you, just to inspire us every day, not only on 8th of March when it is the special Ladies' Day. So many, many thanks also on behalf of FECC, especially to Lynn for moderating it, to you as panelists, to Anna for setting the scene, also to Maria, who is already on the way to Athens, to Diana for doing a lot of troubleshooting behind the scenes. I really think NATO is somewhere maybe in Brussels that we have some internet hiccups. But in any case, many thanks to everyone. Enjoy the day and a nice weekend afterwards, and see you soon at another occasion. And this will for sure not be the last diversity and inclusion event for FECC. And by the way, 30% were male participants.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Really pleasurable.